The Ministry for Primary Industries has launched a full investigation into new hidden camera footage depicting rough treatment of bobby calves on dairy farms. The footage obtained by activist group Farm Watch shows workers throwing days-old calves into trucks and dragging them by their limbs. It's been almost a year since the group went public with their last major expose, which shows a slaughterhouse worker kicking bobby calves and then striking some on the head with a blunt end of an axe. It's brutal footage. The footage led to the workers' conviction and resulted in a public outcry and new industry guidelines. So how are they going? A short time ago, MPI's Compliance Operations Manager, Gary Orr, told Checkpoint the footage is deeply disappointing, and the ministry is immediately launching an investigation.
We can't be everywhere, and the welfare of animals in New Zealand is the responsibility of all of us. Every citizen in this country has a responsibility, and we would encourage people to ring us on our 0800 number if they have any evidence or sightings of animal abuse.
That is Gary Orr, who is MPI's Compliance Operations Manager. Well, what does the dairy industry itself say? Dr Tim Mackle is the Chief Executive Officer, CEO of Dairy NZ. I asked him how many of these bobby calves are produced each season.
Well, roughly we've got about 4.5 million cows in New Zealand, John, and so naturally half of those are bulls. And a fair chunk of them actually end up going to the bull beef industry, so they're reared as beef on dry stock farms, and the remainder, about 1.9 million-ish sort of thing, are bobby calves.
So roughly 1.9 million are bobby calves, and the bobby calves go to the works.
That's right, that's correct.
And the particular thing, it's not unique to New Zealand, but it is unique to grass-fed farming where everything is based around spring births, right? Is that they more or less arrive all at once?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, look, it's the key to our competitiveness, it's being able to harvest off that pasture curve, when you get most of the grass is growing through that spring period, and as a consequence, you aim to calve your cows at a certain time of year to make that happen, rather than calving them all the way through the year. So
which is what grain-fed farming is and indoor farming is, but New Zealand doesn't do much of that. By and large...
Exactly. Our free-range grass system, we tend to calve them in a similar period during the year.
OK, so you've got 1.9 million bobby calves that are going to the works, all arriving in a very short window of time.
Yep.
Is the procedure for getting them to the works respectful enough, and that's a word that Dairy New Zealand uses, and humane enough?
Well, I mean, we've definitely felt there was things we could work on after last year's footage, and you heard the outcry from farmers, John, where most farmers were absolutely deplored by what they saw. They denounced it. They thought it was, disgusting, some of the behaviour they saw, and that's because it's not them. But having said that, we've put a 7-member organisation together, led by MPI, that has looked at that whole process from getting calves through to the works and trying to identify where perhaps weak spots are that we need to tighten up to better look after calves. So there's been a huge amount of work going on, and that sort of results in voluntary things we can do as industries, right, including in the transport sector, John, because that was an area we probably weren't connected well enough with. Through to regulations, of course, some of those came through in August, and there'll be more coming through next year.
Yeah.
So, there's been a lot of work, and I think anecdotally we've heard a lot of good stories about farmers tightening up and doing more around that this year. They've built ramps when they don't actually legally have to until next year. I've heard farmers say, look, I'm going to be there every time when calves are being loaded because they want to make sure that calves get loaded on safely.
So the standards next year will insist that the calves are at least 4 days old and that they are able to walk onto the trucks, right?
Well, quite a few of those aspects of the regs are in place now as of August the 1st, I understand. One of the major ones that comes into play next August is the one about having to have a ramp to load the calves onto trucks. There is a lead time there, and as I said, a lot of farmers, A, already had them, or B, are building them now.
So if the footage shows calves being dragged along the ground by their legs, if the footage shows calves being pushed and thrown onto the back of trucks, is that good enough?
It's unacceptable when we see calves being dragged along the ground in the paddock. I mean, I saw that footage. I've only just seen some of it very briefly, John, before I spoke to you. But from what I did see, that was a particularly lazy and unacceptable act where someone could have picked the calf up and carried them along quite easily. And so, that's not right. What I did see in terms of the loading of calves on the truck, there was one instance there where there were two people doing it, and that's good practice, even from a health and safety point of view. One person was passing a calf to the other person. In another instance I saw, they were loading them, it looked like, onto their bottom and then rolling them backwards. Now that's actually, I'm told, the correct way to do it. Yep, there were a few I saw bump their heads, and that's not good, John. One even looked like it was lifted over and thrown over top of another one. Again, that's not good. But by and large, it looked, from what I could see, like the young fellas were trying to do the right thing, and they've been trained to put them on their bottoms and roll. If you put them on their feet, John, inside the truck straight away, there's a good chance they step backwards and fall off and hurt themselves.
You said last year when the footage came out, which was very disturbing, resolving these issues will depend not on words but on actions. What do you want to say to the farmers you represent about getting these bobby calves off to the works in a decent, humane and respectful fashion?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that, again, dragging a calf through a paddock is unacceptable, and the majority of farmers would feel the same way. Second thing, John, would be well done to those of you who are doing the right thing and are putting your back behind it, because, if you put a whole bunch of cameras out, you're going to find people that are doing things wrong, and unfortunately that's been the case here, and we've got to keep working on that. Clearly we've got stuff we've got to keep working on, but I don't want to go out of here, John, without acknowledging that there's a hell of a lot of good work going on by a lot of farmers too, and we've got to keep working at that.
How do you know what the percentage is?
Well, MPI have the stats certainly on animals arriving at the works, and that's a confidential bit of information. But what I am told by them is that overall, the condition of animals turning up is better, is noticeably better than last year.
So there has been an improvement. There has been a measurable improvement in 12 months.
That's certainly what we've been told. Yep. And at times it hasn't been an easy spring either this year. So there's nothing really I can think of weather-wise. I mean, look, farmers have been doing it tough, as you know, financially, and yet anecdotally, I'm led to believe that in general animals have been turning up better than they did last year.
Can we do better than anecdotally? How many farms does Dairy New Zealand conduct in-depth animal welfare risk assessment surveys at?
We're 500 farms a year. 500
farms a year from 11,900 dairy farms.
Yep.
So fewer than 5%. Do you let them know you're coming? Do you phone up and make an appointment?
Well, not particularly. I mean, it's something that you do talk through, and we actually get trained farmers to do it, because at the end of the day, what this is about is really understanding what's going on and creating change. And so it's not about a big stick coming in, it's about getting alongside them and really understanding what's happening. So we do have a read on it, and we know where we can focus resources. And on the resources, if you look at our website, John, there's a lot of information on good care of bobby calves, huge amount. So I encourage you to get on to Dairy NZ website and have a look at that.
Yes, I have. I've had a look, and it's a good website, but I want to quote you to you and what you said last year.
Yep.
It's not words, and therefore it's not websites. It's about how farmers and truckies and everyone involved in this process is behaving.
Yep, and as I said, ultimately it's really results in the health of animals ending up at the works, and that's something we do need to go to MPI to get those stats from at some point.
When Safe and Farm Watch came out with this footage last year, they were criticised. In fact, one of the Farm Watch people that we've been talking to has received death threats. They were accused of economic sabotage. They were accused of essentially undermining the economic infrastructure of New Zealand. Yet what you are saying is you have responded to that footage, and as a direct result of that footage, farmers are doing better.
That's correct. I think, though, what I would actually pick you up on, John, is the issue people reacted quite negatively, I feel, particularly in our industry, is where the tactics that they employed to put an ad in a London newspaper, denouncing the way we farm in New Zealand, and that struck at the heart of the values and beliefs that not only farmers had here, but a lot of Kiwis. That was more of the issue, not the footage. I didn't find anyone that didn't denounce what they saw, particularly that stuff in the pet food place. I mean, so look, that for me, John, was what happened last year. We all shared the responsibility of getting on and making things better, and that's what we've been trying to do.
It's Dr Tim Mackle, who's the CEO of Dairy New Zealand. Quite a tonal difference between his response to the footage and MPI's response to the footage. Gary Orr, after 5 o'clock, he was much more explicitly and obviously disappointed. MPI have immediately launched an investigation on the basis of the footage we've provided them to. Mojo Mathers of the Green Party has just put out this statement: throwing and dragging of calves has to end. In it, she says, MPI said on Checkpoint they have only 16 animal welfare inspectors for the whole country. That's more than 100,000 calves per inspector, which is just impossible. I have received figures from the Minister earlier this year that show that last year 5,390 calves died or were euthanized between pickup and slaughter. This number has reduced somewhat from previous years, but clearly it is still much too high. MPI has released guidelines to eradicate the mistreatment of bobby calves after last year's footage, but tonight's story shows that little has changed. So that released from the Green Party, and MPI, on the basis of the footage we provided for them, has launched an investigation which they announced on Checkpoint this evening.